Hello, my name is Rachel Turkinage, and I'm the host and producer of a television series on women and spirituality. Spirituality is the kind of word that means everything, so really it means nothing. We throw it around, we use it a lot, but essentially we're all spiritual beings. It's when we capture our passion, when we get involved and we know that something is beyond the rational, that there are things that influence us and affect us, and we can't put words to it, we can't put an explanation to it. We know it's true, we all function that way, but we can't find the words for it. And as women, it's what we all have in common. Whether it's a mother, whether it's a professional person, whether the woman is functioning in her role as partner, in her role as parent, in her role as career person, or artist, or journalist, or it doesn't matter. It's the common spirituality that every woman brings to everything she does.
It's almost always in the music. And if you trust that music, and it is a trusting because you can transcend yourself. And that's my definition of spirituality, is knowing there's something greater than I am.
I think that what my mother said to me really still rings true to a large extent, which is that tradition, like anything else, must be questioned at all times. You know, it's relevant, but how relevant is it today, in my personal circumstances, has to be questioned. Just because it's tradition doesn't mean that you can't question it. And I think that's very important.
I started shooting a few weddings, and I realized that that's where I was supposed to be. I didn't know why. I knew my comfort level. I knew my ability to speak to people, my ability to relate to people, to make people feel comfortable. It all came together.
Whether you're a man who's been affected by the women in your world, the women who were raising you, or the women's voices that were informing the people who were raising you, it's everybody and it's all the time. The only thing that's been missing is we haven't been talking about it. We haven't been naming it, we haven't been discussing it, we haven't been sharing our stories, and that's what we're doing here.
My mom is the most important person to me, and the impact she has made on my life is tremendous. More and more as I think about it, I realize how much of my mom I am, and how she shaped me in terms of my personality, my outlook on life.
I saw amazing women who are in their 70s and 80s hauling barricades, helping kids, setting up lunches, taking care of all these people who are visiting us. And they had such passion for the church, but especially passion for the kids, passion for youth. They really wanted to help youth connect their faith to their lives. So I said, wow, you know, if that energy level is still there in these strong women, I want to be a part of that. And so that's why I accepted to be the pastor.
Now then, as far as the women are concerned, we only talk about the male when we say Anishinaabe. Technically, that is the only way of describing the human being, the helpless human being, Anishinaabe, okay? So to mention the woman in that same breath as Anishinaabe as being worthless or of no value, but we have to remember that the Creator does not make anything that is worthless. It's only in perspective and the way we look at ourselves and the way we understand this. This is not the way that the Creator looks at us, but the way we look at ourselves. So to mention the woman in the same breath as Anishinaabe being of no value whatnot would be to denigrate her sanctity, which is with her forever and ever. And that's what eternal means to us, is anything that is eternal is sacred.
What we don't have happening is women listening to women. A lot of these ideas get brought out. A lot of discussion takes place around questions of spirituality, questions of modernity, connection, community. But we don't hear women speaking to women. And that's part of what has to happen. We have to start hearing the women's voices, because the moment that another woman hears it, there's a connection made, and there's empathy, and then there's engagement, and then there's involvement. And everybody needs to hear this. It's women hearing women, sharing those moments and those stories to all of the listeners out there that haven't heard that voice yet. And yet, we're all affected by it. So it's simply putting a name to what influences us. It's putting a face to the voice that's telling those stories. And it's building communities of women who are sharing all of this, adding their voices to it, and creating this wonderful dialogue.
When I created Little Mosque on the Prairie, all the characters sort of had this, like for example, Bobber, who you see him a beard and very conservative dress, and yet he has turned out to be one of the funniest characters on the show that you wouldn't have expected from the most conservative character on the show. And I've actually heard Americans tell me when they watch Little Mosque on the Prairie, they will see him, and now when they see people similar to him on the street, they can't look at them in the same way anymore because they've seen him fully realized as this father who has a daughter, who talks a certain way, has a certain attitude, and it's changed their perception of that real man on the street.
I began writing really before I knew how to write. My mother describes to me how I would be sitting on the floor and saying, "Don't interrupt me, I'm in the middle," and I'd be making up stories. And I just always did that. It was just intrinsic to me.
I was talking to a mother who had been in a very serious car accident, and her son had been in the car with her. And she said to me in confidence and with a great deal of distress that she had been in the hospital, and while she was in the critical stage of recovery, she didn't even ask about her son. And she said, "Imagine, I'm a mother. I love my children. I pride myself on being a mother. I didn't even ask how my son was doing. He was in the car with me. He was hurt. He was in another part of the hospital. I didn't ask to see him." But that's how basic that instinct to survive is.
I wear a Jewish star so that people know that when I'm working with kids, as I do in one of the things I work on, Moorlands Community Services, which used to be the downtown Anglican church workers, that they know there's a Jewish woman working with Muslim and Hindu children.
We're sharing these stories. We're putting words to it. We're sharing it and telling these stories so that we can build these bonds together, because it needs to be said and it needs to be heard. And the moment that people listen to it, and they listen to that side of someone's life, the side that stays inside, that stays private, but that we all have in common, that's the moment of connection. And that's when we sit down and we say, women and spirituality. It's everywhere. It's always being expressed. It's always influencing. It's always making connections. It's always building communities. It's always growing families. It's always creating partnerships. It's everywhere. We just need to explore it. We need to talk about it, and we need to listen to it.